So think about when your computer starts, like, glitching out.
Yeah.
Your very first instinct is usually just to download a software update, right?
Right. You just patch the bug, restart it, and hope the blue screen of death goes away.
Exactly. You just want to get back to your life.
Because we naturally assume that the underlying operating system is basically sound.
Yeah, that it works.
Right. If the screen freezes or, a program crashes, it's just a minor error in the execution. It's not like a fatal flaw in the machine's core architecture.
But what if the foundational code of the machine is actually irreparably corrupted?
Oh, wow.
Like,
Yeah.
what if every single patch you download actually introduces a new virus because the system itself was programmed upside down from the start?
That is a wild thought.
Right. And welcome to the deep dive, by the way. We know you're here for those big aha moments without the information overload, and today we are jumping into a really radical thought
They
experiment.
really are.
We're looking at a provocative essay from August 2025. It's by an author named Xu, and it's titled, "These 8 Categories of Ideas Can Be Swept into the Dustbin of History."
It's a heavy title.
It is. And the premise here is basically suggesting that our attempts to patch societal bugs are, well, they're completely useless. To actually fix the human condition, the author says we have to completely format the hard drive.
Yeah, and before we start mapping out the architecture of this argument, we really need to set a firm ground rule here.
Absolutely.
Because this material systematically deconstructs some very deeply entrenched political, economic, and social ideologies.
Oh, yeah, across the board.
Right. So our mission today, and we want to be very clear about this, is absolutely not to take a side. We aren't endorsing or condemning any of these viewpoints.
Yeah, we're just the messengers today.
Exactly. We are impartially exploring the logic to just understand how this specific worldview is constructed, and what it asks you to reconsider about daily life.
Okay. So the starting point for this thought experiment is this really profound, almost uncomfortable paradox. If you look around at the reality of modern life, if our current systems, the ones we rely on every single day, were actually working, we would be living in peace.
Right.
Security and contentment would just be the baseline human experience. But instead, the global mood is kind of defined by turmoil.
Yeah, perpetual anxiety.
Yeah, a low-level hum of despair everywhere.
And the conclusion the author draws from that observation is entirely structural.
How so?
Well, it's not that our institutions are failing to protect us. It's that the very institutions we created to protect us they're the exact engines generating our anxiety.
Oh, I see.
Yes, Kefeng argues that our prevailing concepts are fundamentally broken. They just have to be discarded completely if we want to move civilization forward.
Okay, let's trace that logic, starting from the absolute macro level.
The biggest picture.
Right, because the most obvious structures built for our protection are national borders
Right.
and the ideology of patriotism. The conventional wisdom that you and I are taught is that borders keep a community physically safe. And patriotism creates this unifying shared identity so a society can function.
Well, okay, let's unpack this. Because the author argues that patriotism does unify the people inside the line.
Right.
But drawing a circle to define us automatically and, inevitably creates a them on the outside.
Oh, wow. Yeah, of course.
And this is the core mechanism of the critique. The author's worldview asks you to visualize humanity as a single, indivisible whole. No lines.
Just a completely blank globe.
Exactly. And when you adopt that perspective, localized loyalty inherently splinters the broader human family.
Wait, really? So patriotism is seen as a negative?
In this text, patriotism is framed not just as outdated, but as a reactionary force that actively stalls progress.
Because it turns global civilization into this massive zero-sum game.
Exactly. Think about the energy, the trillions of dollars of military spending.
And massive resource allocation.
Right, just wasted defending arbitrary geographical lines. We spend our collective human capital preparing to fight each other instead of cooperating on a planetary scale.
Okay, so the argument suggests that borders ultimately only serve a tiny fraction of political power holders.
Yes, offering literally nothing of true value to the ordinary person. In a functional operating system for humanity, goods and people would circulate freely worldwide, no restriction, no passports.
Just imagine erasing those physical and ideological lines.
It's hard to wrap your head around.
It is. The anxiety of national security, the fear of foreign invasion, trade wars, all of it just evaporates because the concept of a competing nation state no longer exists.
Yeah.
But that macro division, that's just the outer layer of the onion,
Right,
right?
because the anxiety filters all the way down into how we interact within our communities on a daily basis.
Right.
Which brings us to the daily engines of human interaction.
Money and competition.
Yeah. And the language used to describe money in this essay is, well, it's absolute. It
Really?
is called a devil's bait. Yeah. An instrument that lures society into a realm of darkness. The observation here is that we have engineered a society more ruthless than the animal kingdom.
Because you literally cannot take a single step without it.
Exactly. You can't secure a meal. You can't find a place to sleep without cash. And the author says this completely contradicts the greatest creator's will.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. That hyper-financialization elevates wealth accumulation above actually pursuing a healthy society.
Right.
It forces humanity into this endless, panicked chase, like a treadmill where even the person in first place is exhausted and terrified of falling off.
That's a great analogy because it's intimately tied to the ideology of competition. We just accept competition as the ultimate driver of excellence, right?
Yeah, we're told it pushes us to invent, to be efficient.
But evaluate the actual mechanism of hypercompetition. The text argues it only rewards greater intelligence, stronger fists, or the ability to exploit ethical gray areas.
The law of the jungle.
The law of the jungle, dressed up in corporate business suits. And the critical flaw here, this system produces zero true winners.
Right, because even if you're the one standing at the absolute top of the corporate ladder, you haven't actually won anything permanent.
No, the game never stops.
You are permanently guarding against rivals, terrified of latecomers catching up. Even a 100-year-old person lives in fear of being surpassed.
It's just a recipe for a global panic attack.
Yeah.
And that permanent state of exhaustion is exactly why these systems must go into the dustbin.
So what's the alternative then?
The alternative relies on awakening qualities that are inherent in human nature. Truth, kindness, beauty, trustworthiness.
Okay, hold on. Running a global supply chain on truth and beauty, that sounds incredibly fragile.
It does sound naive at first glance.
Right. How does a society transition from a fiercely competitive market, one that uses the threat of starvation to motivate workers, to an economy of sincerity without just collapsing into massive shortages?
Well, it requires dismantling the actual prize everyone is competing for.
The prize.
Yeah. The anxiety of the rat race is driven by the desire to accumulate and hoard. You can't shift to an economy of trustworthiness as long as the ultimate goal is absolute ownership over resources.
Oh, I see. Which brings us to the concept of private property.
Yes, the absolute sanctity of private property.
It is the finish line everyone is sprinting toward. You work, you compete, so you can buy a piece of the world and build a giant fence around it.
And the essay acknowledges that during humanity's primitive stages, treating private property as sacred served a vital purpose.
It provided physical security when resources were scarce.
Exactly. But to enter a higher stage of civilization, this principle halts progress. The ideal state the author proposes is defined by this beautiful paradox.
Which is?
To own nothing, yet possess everything.
Okay, we have to clarify a really crucial distinction here for the listener, because abandoning private property usually triggers immediate panic, right?
Oh, absolutely. Fears of home invasions, loss of rights.
Exactly. But the text explicitly condemns physical violation. Invading someone's physical home, their body, or their dignity is still considered barbaric in this framework.
Right. The target isn't your personal safety. It's the concept of private property as a supreme ideology.
It's about hoarding.
Yes. It's the profound difference between personal security and ideological accumulation. When you elevate private property to an absolute virtue, it catalyzes moral decline.
Because the ultimate goal of life just becomes building a fortress to hoard resources exclusively for yourself.
Right, so owning nothing yet possessing everything, it shifts the paradigm toward communal stewardship.
Think about like a sprawling, beautiful national park or a massive public library.
Great examples.
You don't hold the deed to the forest, you can't sell the trees, but you possess the experience, the shade, the benefit of that land entirely.
You have all the utility without the crushing anxiety of guarding the perimeter.
Right, and the idea is to scale that exact concept of stewardship up to encompass all of life's necessities.
You just remove the fundamental need to hoard because access is universally guaranteed. If food, shelter, and security are ubiquitous, private property becomes a redundant concept.
It ceases to be the prize.
Exactly. Which completely defangs the ruthless competition we were just talking about.
But if we pull on this thread, the deconstruction doesn't stop at physical property, does it?
Not at all.
The institutions we use to structure our most intimate lives and our societies are next on the chopping block.
Tearing up the contracts.
Yeah, marriage, the nuclear family, and all legal systems. Everything from local city regulations all the way up to the UN Charter into the dustbin.
So let's look at the nuclear family first, because it connects directly back to our discussion on borders.
Oh, right.
Similar to how a national border creates a macro us versus them, the traditional family unit operates as a micro border.
I never thought of it that way.
The author views marriage and the nuclear family as outdated concepts that actually obstruct broader social progress and individual liberation.
Because it creates this hyper-localized loyalty. You prioritize the accumulation of wealth and security for your specific genetic unit, right?
Yeah.
Over the broader human family.
It's the exact same mechanism as patriotism, just scaled down to a single household. The fortress of private property is built specifically to protect the nuclear family inside it.
Okay, so what stands out to you here listening to this? Because to me, scrapping the UN Charter and family units, that sounds like pure chaos. How does any society function without the guardrails of the law?
Well, the author asks us to objectively evaluate the efficacy of those systems. We live in an era with the most comprehensive legal systems in human history.
Very true.
Yet, humanity remains deeply unsatisfied. So, the logic flows that if the laws were actually effective, we wouldn't be living in a state of perpetual anxiety.
So the laws themselves have a fundamental defect. They're failing.
They are artificial band-aids. The author says it's like trying to fix a cracked, sinking foundation by just applying more and more coats of expensive paint.
The law is just the paint.
Right. And the proposed solution is purifying the human soul. If the soul is purified, elaborate legal systems become unnecessary. If the soul is unpurified, no volume of sophisticated laws will ever fix the root problems.
Purifying the human soul sounds really profound. But mechanically, how is that achieved? You can't just delete the UN Charter and expect 8 billion people to suddenly operate on pure intentions.
Right. Without guardrails, you assume a rapid descent into anarchy.
Hmm.
But the mechanism relies on the complete systemic overhaul we've been tracking.
The whole operating system format.
Yes. The unpurified soul is viewed as a symptom of living in a world defined by artificial scarcity and competition.
Okay.
When you remove the engines of anxiety money, borders, the need to hoard property, you remove the environmental pressures that corrupt human behavior in the first place.
So human nature is inherently cooperative.
In this view, yes. And the text claims that a complete set of new principles, a new framework for production in daily life, is already prepared to replace these old systems.
Okay, so with all existing systems swept into the dustbin, what actually fills the void?
This worldview actively defends ideals that modern society is heavily conditioned to reject, specifically utopianism and communism.
Whoa, okay. Which requires stripping away a massive amount of 20th century geopolitical baggage.
Absolutely.
Because the critique takes direct aim at anti-utopian thinkers, like the philosopher Friedrich Hayek, who famously argued that utopian ideals lead inevitably to tyranny.
Right, and there is this brilliant, highly effective analogy used here to dismantle Hayek's arguments.
I love this part.
The author points out that Hayek never actually lived in a utopian society.
Right.
So criticizing a utopia without ever experiencing one is compared to someone who has never tasted a watermelon,
Right.
claiming to know definitively whether it is sweet or bitter.
It completely reframes the debate. A utopia isn't framed as an impossible, naive fantasy. It's just humanity's valid aspiration for an ideal way of life.
Exactly. And suppressing that aspiration for a better world is positioned as a literal moral wrong.
Like we're being told to accept the misery of the current system because dreaming of a better one is somehow dangerous.
Right. And to understand this perspective, we have to fundamentally decouple the ideal of shared resources from its historical execution.
Right, because the author explicitly states that Karl Marx's theory was incomplete.
Yes, genuine communism cannot be understood through Marx's writings, nor can it be judged by the practices of Lenin or Mao Zedong or any 20th century implementation.
Okay, so if we aren't talking about the Soviet model and we aren't talking about Marx's theory, what is the actual definition of true communism in this framework?
It is defined strictly and purely as the Great Harmony.
The Great Harmony.
Yes, a state where all people on Earth peacefully and equitably share sunlight, air, water, and resources.
That's a beautiful image.
And the text challenges the reader to find the flaw in this aspiration. Is it truly preferable to maintain our current system, where some enjoy unearned luxury while others work relentlessly just to fail to secure basic necessities?
The goal is really to rescue the concept of shared harmony from its modern dystopian associations.
Exactly.
It is just a massive systematic deconstruction of literally every pillar of human civilization. Borders, money, property, the nuclear family, international law.
All swept away to make room for this great harmony.
But after delivering such a sweeping teardown of everything we know, the essay ends with a remarkably calm sign-off.
It really does. Yufeng states they have absolutely no desire to debate or argue with
None of your
anyone.
call to anger or revolution.
None. If you believe your current path is correct and it brings you genuine happiness, that is wonderful. Continue walking it.
Yeah.
But if it does not bring you happiness, the implication is simply that you have been less wise. And perhaps it is time to reconsider the foundation you were building your life upon.
It is a very quiet end to an incredibly loud thought experiment.
It is.
And it leaves you with a really profound question about the nature of human drive. If humanity actually achieved this author's ultimate vision, a world where we own nothing yet possess everything, with no money to chase, no competitors to beat, no borders to cross, how would our daily motivation to wake up, invent, and create actually change?
What drives human ambition when the survival instinct is permanently retired?
That is a fascinating question to sit with.
It really is.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.